For this video, we are going to be talking through some new rules for our basic battle super small skirmishes that deal with magic and spell casting. Ta-da! Hello gamers, Matthew here from Grey Army Gaming. In the past couple of months, I've got some really good questions about magic and spell casting for our basic battle super small skirmish game set. Now, I am preparing to fight this battle of 7 wizards, all against all in a battle royale, and so I have to come up with some rules for magic and spellcasting that I want to try out in this game. What I thought I would do is to go ahead and explain those rules in this short video, and then give you the actual battle report in a later video. So the idea I'm playing around with here is that each wizard will begin with a total of 10 wounds. Now, in addition to that, each wizard will also begin with a total of 10 magic points. Now, each spell costs a certain amount of magic points to cast, and therefore you will draw from your spell magic points. Let's say we cast a spell for 2 magic points, then we would go down to a total of 8 magic points. Now, it is possible at any point in the game, instead of drawing on magic points, to draw on life points, so hit points, in order to cast spells. Let's say, for example, that our wizard has 1 magic point left, and he wants to cast a spell that costs 3 magic points total. Now, he obviously doesn't have 3 magic points. He has 1, so he can spend that. He still needs 2 more. Now, what he can do is he can spend 2 of his hit points and go down from 10 life to 8 life in order there to successfully cast the spell. What makes this fun now is that you can draw on your own life in desperation if you need to get off that last spell. For this particular rule set, I've come up with a total of 6 spells that each of the wizards has in their spell book that they can use. Now, these spells cost different amounts of magic points, and they have different effects. So I'd like to run through each of them in turn, starting with the cheapest or the easiest spell and heading up to the most expensive and the most dangerous one. The first spell is Dispel Magic, and this costs 1 magic point. Now, what this spell does is it removes a spell that is on you or on a character or figurine that you are touching. So during your magic phase, you can cast Dispel Magic and then remove a magical effect. The second spell is Magic Ward. This costs 2 magic points, and what it does is it gives you protection from magical effects until your next round. So you can either cast it on yourself or on someone that you are in base-to-base contact with. So during your magic phase, you cast Magic Ward, and until your next turn, you cannot be affected by other magical spells. The third spell is Teleport, and this costs 2 magical points to cast. What this spell does is during your magic phase, when you cast it, you're immediately given up to 6 additional inches of movement. It is important to note that with this spell, you are unable to zigzag. Instead, you need to pick a single point in the distance and then move up to 6 inches in that direction. So once again, in a straight line, and only when you have line of sight to the point in which you are going to teleport. In other words, you cannot teleport to things or places that you cannot see. The fourth spell is Magical Gate, and this costs 2 points to cast. Now, what this does is that you pick out a character within your line of sight, and you cast a spell on that character, which leaves that character immovable until your next magic turn. So during their turn, they are unable to move, unless, of course, they cast Dispel Magic, and in that case, they are able to move. Although the magic phase comes after the movement phase, we see with this spell the importance of being able to use Dispel Magic whenever you want. So let's take this character, for example. He has had Magical Gate cast upon him, and it comes to his turn. His movement phase, he's unable to move at this point, so he uses Dispel Magic to remove this spell from him, allowing him now to move. In this case, he has used his magic for this turn, so he has no magic phase later on. The fifth spell is Fireball. This costs 2 magic points to cast, and what it does is you can pick out a character that is within your line of sight, within 8 inches, and it casts out a fireball that causes an automatic 1 wound. For this particular spell, I'm going to be using the Games Workshop 8-inch templates. These are fantastic. They give you just the right shape and just the right distance. So here is how it will look when we are attacking from the guy on the left to the guy on the right, causing 1 automatic wound. Now, if there is another guy within the template, he will also suffer 1 wound. So it is really good to try to shoot fireballs into people who are tied up into combat. The 6th and final spell in the spellbook is Magic Storm. This costs 3 magic points to cast, and what you do is you find a point up to 12 inches away where you set down a marker, and then you roll a d6 and a scatter dice to see where the storm moves. So for example, let's shoot towards this guy on the right from our guy on the left. We're going to pick a point that is exactly 12 inches from us. So there is our point that we are intending and shooting for. But this magic is very chaotic. It never seems to land exactly where you intend. And for this reason, we will need to roll a scatter die and a d6. The scatter die is your standard scatter die from Games Workshop's Warhammer games. Now there are arrows on 4 sides, and on 2 sides there are these direct hit crosshair markings. If you get a direct hit, then your storm does not move. It will go exactly where the marker is. However, if you get an arrow, it will move in that direction based on your d6 roll. So what you can do is you roll both of these off and see what you get. And here we see that I have a direct hit, so the 6 inches doesn't make any difference. I would put my template down on that point, and anyone under that template would take damage. If you don't have a scatter die, you can just use a d10 and use the direction that it is pointing, and a d6. You can say this: on a 1, 2, 3, 4, that is the arrow. On a 5 or 6, it is a direct hit. So let's roll these 2 off and see what we get. All right, it is an arrow for a 1, and you see it is moving in this direction. How many inches? Then roll your d6, 1 inch. So let's run back over to our wizard here. This is our intended point. Let's roll our scatter die and a d6. Now we are going to be moving 2 inches in that direction. So this is where our spell will hit. Let's set down our 5-inch template right over that point and see if it hits any of our characters. No, it does not. Like I said, this is a chaotic and a very unpredictable spell, but it can be very beneficial if you have people grouped together. So for example, I may end up hitting both of these guys because the spell moved 2 inches in that direction. And for the effect of the spell, it will cause 2 automatic wounds to any character underneath the template. And if you don't have the cool templates that I'm using, you can always use things like the Games Workshop large blast templates. Those work great. Those are 5 inches. Or you can just make your own, like in the case of this one. So there you go. That is a run through of the 6 magic spells that each of the wizards has in their spell book. Now you might be thinking, this is way too easy and it is way too simple. This seems way too overpowered for wizards. Isn't there any possibility for negative effects to the spell? And the answer to that is yes. Every time you cast a spell, you always need to roll a d20 to interpret the result. And let's explain that right now. So once we have picked a spell and we have decided to cast it, we subtract the cost from our magic points for this spell, and then we roll our d20. We can interpret the results according to the chart you see here on the left. A 1 is a critical failure, which means that the wizard himself takes 1 wound and he loses an additional magic point. On a 2 to a 5, it is a failed spell and you lose an additional magical point. On a roll of a 6 to a 19, it is a success. And on a 20, it is a critical success, which means you gain a wound and you gain back 1 additional magic point. So our wizards are really good. They will only fail on a 1 to a 5, and on a 6 to 20, they will have a success. But this is the way magic should be. It should be a little unpredictable and a little bit dangerous. So if you do critical fail, you are going to be paying the price for it. Let's show you a quick example of how this can look. Let's say this wizard has his turn now. He has already gone through his movement phase, and now he comes to his magic phase. He wants to cast Magic Ward on himself. So he will pay his 2 magic points, dropping him down from 10 magic to 8 magic points. Then let's go ahead and roll off for the spell to see the success or failure. This is a 19, so that is a success. Once he has been successful, we can put the Magic Ward on him, thus concluding his magic turn. Were we to have rolled a 20, which is a critical success, then we would have gained 1 magic point back, which would have brought us back to 9 magic points. However, if he is at full life, he cannot go up to 11. He will remain at 10. Had he been at a lower hit point total, say 6, then he would have gone up to 7. Were we to have rolled a 1, a critical failure, the spell would have failed. He would have lost an additional magic point, which would drop him down to 7, and he would have lost a wound. Well, there you have it, folks. A quick run through of some special rules for magic and spell casting that we will be using for our basic battles, Super Small Skirmishes. The upcoming battle between the 7 wizards will be the game in which we try this out, so stay tuned to see how these rules actually play on the battlefield. If you like this kind of content, please do give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, and I will continue to make more content like this in the future. And most importantly, thank you for joining us here today at Grey Army Gaming for the future of gaming.
Basic Battles, tabletop games for kids.
Let the magic flow!